Hey everyone, welcome back to Empire Secrets of Digital Marketing. I'm your host, Mariana Henninger. This is the podcast for the 6 to 7 figure online business owner. Mostly if you're a coach or an expert, if you sell your expertise online, this is the show for you. And as many of you know who are our avid listeners, week in, week out, every other week or so, I do an Empire Diaries episode. And this is an Empire Diaries episode, and it's going to really feel like a diary entry. I'm going to share something that I was chatting with my husband about. By the way, I just got off an interview for an upcoming episode with Mike Michalowicz, best-selling author of Profit First. He has a new book coming out called The Money Habit, and it's all about how to put your personal finance in order. And it's all about folks who have done the right thing in Profit First, but their personal finances are a mess. So how to really automate things and work with your natural habits to get your money in order in your personal life. So we chatted all about Profit First and how things would be different in 2026. And we chatted about his new book. So excited for that episode to come out. But back to what I was saying, I had a conversation with my husband this morning, and I realized that this is something that's happening in a really big way for me. And the realization actually came to me. So I'm sorry, I'm really going on a lot of tangents here, but the realization came to me yesterday. Was Sunday. I was cooking a meal. I was actually doing a ton of meal prep yesterday, which is one of my new habits of the year. Actually meal prepping, actually having a plan for the week. Like, what am I going to eat this week? And preparing it in advance. I was listening to my friend Farya Barlas's new podcast called From Trauma to CEO. And one of the things that she talked about in her amazing podcast, which I really recommend you go take a listen. I need to have her on the show. In fact, I'm going to send her a quick message right after this. One of the things she talked about was our strength that often if we're overachievers that had some sort of trauma when we were young, we have these strengths that we're known for. We have these qualities, these characteristics that people associate with us. And oftentimes they were birthed from maybe a traumatic experience when we were younger, whether that was like full-blown trauma or just challenges that we went through when we were younger that we've carried on. And so what she talked about in this particular episode was about how to not let go of those strengths, how to not, essentially acknowledge where they came from, but continue to own them, but from a place of strength and from a place of choice. That's what it was. So they might have been birthed in trauma, but now they are part of who we are by choice and not by coming from a place of challenge and maybe in a destructive way. I'm obviously not a therapist. She is. And so I hope I'm doing this justice, Farya, if you're listening. But it got me thinking. So she had a prompt at the end of that episode, which was, what are 3 things that people describe about you? And that was like the beginning of the prompt, right? Like, what if people were to describe 3 things that really stand out about you, what are the things you hear people say? And I think there are some exercises that happen after you identify those 3 things, which would be in a different episode. But it got me thinking about how people describe me. And I think the words, I didn't actually have like 3 that were very, very clear, but I think drive was a big one, like ambitious, driven. And it got me thinking about strength. So this is what this episode is about. I'm going to talk about what strength means to me and this realization I had this morning that I shared with my husband. And it all kind of ties into 2026. This is the beginning of 2026. I mean, we're almost to the end of the first month, which is absolute bananas to think about. I do feel like, so if you've listened to my previous Empire Diaries episode, I share a lot about the 1% Diary. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get paid to promote Stephen Bartlett's awesome planner, but I love it in part because it's kept me focused on journaling every hour of my day. And journaling is probably not the right word. It's just keeping track of what I'm doing. I want to be held accountable for every hour of the day. So on every given day, there is a line next to each hour of the day. And so I force myself, ideally during the day, but sometimes at the end of the day, to kind of have an account of what I worked on and what I did. And why am I bringing this up? Because part of this accountability of time has to do with this word that I'm really owning this year, which is strength. I've really been taking my time more intentionally and feeling more in my power to do so. So that's where like the strength parallel comes in. I've also been taking my investment at the gym a lot more seriously. So 2025 for me was a year all about building consistency. I was going regularly. I started paying a lot more attention to what I put in my body. It's definitely not perfect, but it's a lot more intentional. So there was a lot of intentionality around going to the gym, being consistent, starting to look at what foods I eat on a regular basis, and consistently choosing better foods. And anyway, so let me fast forward. That's the context. And this morning, when I was chatting with my husband, the realization that I had was that I have always looked at myself as somebody who is really powerful. So strength being sort of a consistent theme of my life. I have never felt like a damsel in distress. I have worked in some absurdly rough situations. I have been embedded in armies in different war zones. I have slept in Bedouin tents on a thin mattress on the floor when it was really, really cold outside for days on end to work on story. All of this to work on stories, right? Whether I was a photographer in the very beginning and then obviously doing video, which is much, much tougher at the very least from like an equipment perspective and the amount of hours needed to tell a really good story. And I've always been really resilient. You know, I didn't need, at least at the time, things have changed. I'm older now. I definitely need my creature comforts. But throughout my life, I have roughed it. You know, I have really put myself in dangerous situations. I have been hungry. I've eaten crappy food because we were shooting for 14 hours and there was nothing open at 10 p.m. in the middle of Iowa or in the middle of the desert or in the middle of a war zone. You know, it's just been this theme of mine where my needs don't matter. It's all about the story and it's all about getting what I need to tell a great story. And so that's the kind of the way I've operated throughout my whole life. In fact, if you've been around my content for a while, or if you've gotten my emails, you might know that my career kind of started when I lived in a hostel. So I shared a room with 11 other people. I had the bottom bunk. So sometimes there were strangers sleeping above me. There were always strangers sleeping around me. And that was my start. You know, I was $5 a day to live in this hostel right outside the old city of Jerusalem. And every day I would pitch stories to the editor because I wanted to publish, right? I wanted to get my stories out there and be sent on assignment and actually be paid to go and take photos. Every day I would pitch different stories, or I would send. Actually, this was before we could actually send a photo with our phones, because that would have been so much better. I would have just been taking the photos. But back in the day, I would send an email or I would call the editor and I would be like, hey, here's the story. Like, what do you think? So wild. We didn't have, it was definitely before Blackberries. We didn't have emails on our phone. Oh my gosh. Super dating myself here. But anyway, all this to say that I had always looked at myself as like a person of strength. And what I'm realizing, you know, I've really taken stock of the last 3 years. My business has been around for 3 years. I left NBC 4 years ago. So the first year I spent really giving myself time to decompress. It was a very, very stressful year. My last year working in a big news organization, even though we were working remotely, I was literally burning the candle on both ends. I was giving it my all. Anyway, so I needed a year to decompress and a year to kind of give myself space to really think about, okay, what do I want to build? What is this business going to be? I don't want to have just a production company where if I'm not showing up or I'm at the whims of the client, if I'm not doing the work, I don't get paid. So I knew I wanted to build something different. And so that's kind of where I was at in year one. And so 3 years in, where am I at now? And what is different about 2026? What am I building differently in 2026 that didn't exist before? And that's going to make me look back. I mean, I already look back at January 2025 and be like, oh my gosh, I am light years ahead of where I was last year. And it's not reflected in my revenue necessarily, but it is reflected in how I'm treating my business, how I'm looking at my business. And the realization that I had was that even though I have all of these stories of how tough I was and how much strength I had, and this idea that, I didn't really need help, but I could get, I don't even know how to describe it. I just felt like I was very independent. Nothing was too rough or too hard or too long for me. I would get it done. And yet I feel like that was kind of a facade, because the whole time I was growing, like I didn't really know what I was doing. And, I think maybe I need a session with my friend Farya, because I can't exactly even like calculate what happened, but I just know that when I look at least the business years of my life, so forget, the documentary filmmaking years, but if I'm looking at just the business years that I've had Brand Magnetic, every other year before this one has felt, in comparison, like I was treating it as a hobby, which is crazy to say because I've always taken work so seriously. But it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know, right? So as you're building your business and growing your business, there's so many things that you're finding out. And when you have that realization and that mental capacity to understand how a business runs, you can look back before you got that and be like, whoa, man, how clueless was I? And so I feel like as much as the word or the concept of strength has been such an important part of my identity, this year has felt like a new, there's a new shift. There's a new gear that has shifted, or I'm in a new gear shift. I don't even know how to say it, but things are operating differently. And it feels so good because I feel like everything I've built up to this point has been kind of like the elastic on the slingshot that's been like pulled, stretched. And I am primed to burst forth. And if I were to pinpoint, I mean, there's so many things that have kind of led to this moment in my business, but some of the big ones are being so critically in tune with what I say. I want to credit Dan Henry. He's somebody I follow, and he has a saying that, whether you like him or not, he has a saying that goes, "You'll never be broke if you know what to say." And that is so true. And it really made me think about, okay, why am I not paying enough? I'm not paying enough attention to the words on my landing page or the words on my social content and the words in my emails, which my emails are probably going to kind of stay kind of where they're at, but maybe the call to action or the thing that I'm leading into, that messaging has to be really dialed in. And I feel like up to this point, it's kind of been willy-nilly. And to be fair, part of that is because I do something that nobody else does. The way that I help online business owners, coaches, and experts not only stand out, but build trust faster. Like nobody else does what I do in the way, like our system is so unique that I can't model anybody. I can't look at what other people are doing and, just kind of, oh, okay, they're going at it from this approach and this is the word the words they're using. Let me see how I can put my own spin on this. No, everyone I look to, I don't have any competitors. So everyone I look to is adjacent to what I'm doing. And I have to not only look at what they're doing and assume that they're doing a good job, but this leads me to point number 2. So basically what I'm describing is what made my business go from being kind of a hobby, which sucks to say because I have been so serious about it, but I didn't know what I didn't know about running a business, which is what I know now. And I know that 1 year from now, I'm going to look back in January 2026 and be like, oh my gosh, I knew nothing. But okay. But, just having that year of looking back, what changed for me to feel like I'm in such a different moment of my business. So that's number one. My messaging and my words, my copy are so much more dialed in. Number two, and it kind of feeds into number one. Oh my gosh, talking to my people. And this is something that oh my gosh, we've been talking about it so much in my peer groups about the importance of relying less on AI to write our stuff. I'm using AI so much less than I was before, which is so ironic because everyone is like, how can I use it more? And I'm like, I want to use AI to write my stuff less and less and less. And I want to re-own and reclaim my own words and my own writing muscle and my own understanding of my own people. In fact, I was listening to a podcast episode yesterday that a friend of mine in this peer mastermind group that I'm in sent to me. I'll add the link in the show notes. It was an episode with Nathan Barry, who was interviewing, I think, the CEO of a company called StoryGrid, or the co-founder, I guess. And this co-founder, whose name I really did forget, so I apologize if this ever gets to him, but brilliant guy, so much transparency around his numbers and around his profit margins and around, like, he was making $700K in his business and not taking home a dime. And so what changed? How did he turn that boat around? And the thing that really was the catalyst for this big pivot was that he consulted a marketing coach, and she told him, you don't know your people enough. And he just kind of started and didn't stop talking to his people. He booked 600 ICA calls in 18 months, 600 calls. So each call was around 30 minutes, and that just inspired the crap out of me. So I want to get on the phone with my people. In fact, if you're listening to this and you want to get on a phone call with me, DM me on Instagram, please. Just reach out to me like, hey, Mariana, I'll chat with you. And I will give you the link to book some time on my calendar. And let's chat. Let's just have it out. I want to ask you deep questions, which I'm really good at, by the way. I've had such great feedback when people chat with me, because it really is a great exercise for them as well. Not just to see how I do it, but it opens up a lot of thinking around what they're doing and what they're about. It's kind of like therapy. So I'll give you free therapy. But anyway, so 600 people he talked to that were his ideal clients. And that really is point number two for me. Just in a little bit that I chatted with one of my former students from the Brand Video Accelerator from the last cohort, she gave me such wonderful nuggets in a quick conversation that we had, a quick email exchange. And so excited to talk to more people. So that's number two. Number three really has to do with what I kind of started the episode talking about, which is taking ownership of my time. And I'm pointing to my 1% diary, is owning every hour of the day. What am I doing in this hour? And why is it important? Is it actually moving the needle? Is it actually something that needs to happen right now by me? Is it something that I should be outsourcing instead? Which, by the way, if you're listening to this and either this is you, which it probably won't be, but maybe you know somebody, I am looking for a go high level designer. And what I mean by that is I cannot spend more time pixel pushing my landing pages so that they actually look good on desktop or mobile. So I am ready to hire someone to do that for me. And if you know anyone, please let me know. Just reach out to me on Instagram at Brand Magnetic, or send me an email, hello@brandmagnetic.com. I would love some recommendations around that. So number three is it's owning my inputs, owning the things that I'm actually doing. So I feel like I've talked enough about that. I have entire episodes around that. So I'm going to move on to number four before we wrap this up. Number four is focusing on sales. And if I take stock of the last 3 years of my business, one of the massive things that I'm doing differently this year is that I feel like I spent 3 years of the business trying to grow organically and not having enough time to really do that well. So if I'm being honest, I feel like I've half-assed my organic growth. I don't have a ton of followers. I'm not that consistent in posting. I've gotten on a bunch of podcasts, but truth be told, a lot of these podcasts aren't that big. It hasn't really grown my email list that much. Even the big podcasts that I've grown, maybe I didn't know how to leverage them enough. Shout out to my friend Beth Neidick. And I feel like I need to get inside your coaching program because you focus on that, and could really use some help with that. But anyway, all this to say that my organic efforts have made have made my growth really slow. And part of the slow growth was the offer, right? It was my coaching program that when it started, I was beta testing for quite a while. And so it wasn't proven yet. It wasn't tried and true. It wasn't battle tested. And I feel like today is a different story. Like the offer is battle tested. I know how to help people create a brand video, install this trust system in their business fast. And so I can only do that now after testing it round after round, after launching so many times and getting so many students through the program with actual created brand videos at the other end. Because one thing is like to sell the program and to help people, but do they actually do the work is a whole other story. So getting completed brand videos at the end of the program, having a program that runs successfully, I knew that would take time, and it did. But the growth of my business, I really feel like I spent the last 3 years growing too slowly. So this year, this is where my focus on ads is going to be greater than ever. And it's not going to replace my organic, but it is going to spearhead my growth with ads until I have a running machine. So my goal for this year is to have a running machine where my webinar is like, it's amazing. It's so powerful. Like it's an impactful experience, which I know I will only get good at after doing it over and over and over again. So this is the experiment I'm starting. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes as well for this. But every 2 weeks, hold me accountable, my friend. But every 2 weeks, I'm going to be running my training. It's called, in short, the Trust Shift. And you can sign up for it at brandmagnetic.com/the shift, or brandmagnetic.com/masterclass is kind of the catch-all that will always point to the current training. It is going to be a powerful training. And listen, I will tell you right off the bat, I'm not going to show you how to create a brand video in this training. I am going to shift your perspective about how people need to be sold to and want to be sold to in 2026. That is what you're getting in this lesson. It's not here's how you hold your phone so you can take the best shot for your brand video. No, I'm not a tips and tricks gal. I am a perspective shift. Let's go gal. And there's no way I can teach you how to create a brand video in 60 minutes. So I'm not even going to try. I am going to just show you how to connect with people, how human connection works in 2026 when we're surrounded and inundated and drowning in AI content that sucks. And this is why I want to use AI less and less for my content. Everything is garbage out there. There's very little signal to noise. The ratio is really, really off. And so that's what people are craving. They are craving connecting with you as a human before being sold to, right? They don't actually want to be sold to. In fact, you don't have to sell people when you've created that connection as soon as they meet you and they are now attracted to you. They want to come to you. They are drawn to what you have to offer because of that powerful connection that you made as soon as they met you. So that's what I specialize in. And that's the perspective shift. Like, how does that work is what I'm bringing to the table. So until I have this engine running, which is what I'm working on right now, my focus on bringing new people into my world is going to be through ads, speaking to the people already on my list. So for now, I'm not really promoting this class until I feel like I've got it down pat. And so once that's the case, I'm going to have kind of a mini launch for my program, but I kind of want to be selling out consistently by the time I present this class to my warm audience. So anyway, my friends, is point number 4 is focusing on getting more people in the door faster than what I've been doing the last 3 years, doing social media content. So that is the shift. That is the big shift. In fact, shift is probably the word that's most important for me right now, and why I named my masterclass the Trust Shift. That's really what's how to create an instant human connection and accelerate your sales, your coaching program sales in 2026. All right, my friends, with that, I want to leave you and ask you, what is the thing that you're doing differently? Not just one thing, but what is the big shift that you're making in your business in 2026 that will make you look back, or is making you look back at 2025, January of 2025, and think, oh my gosh, I knew so little back then. And I'm operating. So this is the key. Not just am I operating in a different way, but I have a new identity. And so, last Empire Secrets episode, I shared about my identity as a 7-figure founder. I'm on my way there, and I appreciate you so much for following along on my journey to 7 figures inside of Brand Magnetic. In fact, in a big applause to Mr. Mike Michalowicz, not just 7-figure in revenue, but 7 figures in profit. So let's go 2026. I hope this was inspirational for you. If you got something out of this episode, would you let me know? Just send me a quick hello on Instagram at Brand Magnetic. I'd love to hear from you guys. I get your warm messages, and it really is thrilling to me. It really warms my heart to hear from you guys as listeners of this episode. Thank you for sticking around, and make sure to catch us on the next episode of Empire Secrets. Bye for now.